This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Hi, curious minds out there in our ever-expanding radio land. Welcome to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. That's me, the only radio show in the world dedicated to the study of coincidences, synchronicity, and serendipity. We are coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, located in rainy Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and broadcasting all over the world. Synchronicity, spoken here. What is the relationship between mind and brain? Does brain produce consciousness, or does the greater consciousness produce the brain? How do mind and brain interact with each other? I'm a psychiatrist. I study this question in my office. I help people with medications and psychotherapy. I work in both mind and brain. You need your mind to recognize a coincidence and your brain to talk about it. Coincidences are like messages in a bottle. The message can be about you, and the message can be about where the bottle and the message came from, that sea of possibilities. Synchronicity, spoken here. The phrase, quote, connecting with coincidence, is my coincidence brand. It is the name of my book, my Psychology Today blog, my website, and my social media sites. To find any and all of them, please put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine. Would you like to know how sensitive to coincidences you are? Take the Weird Coincidence Survey on my website. Our guest today is a foremost researcher into reincarnation, life after life, Dr. Jim Tucker. When some people die, nature reacts. At a picnic, a woman grieving the loss of her 5-day-old child sees a small bird land on her breast. The bird stays there until she shoos it away, symbolizing for her the letting go of the baby. A woman's favorite flower blooms after her death in the dead of winter. Her husband appreciates what she is experiencing, and to her it's a symbol of him with her. On June 12, 2016, there was a massacre in Orlando at the Pulse nightclub. The vigil afterwards, the Orlando Vigil outside Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, was attended by thousands of people. A bell tolled for each of the 49 victims killed when Omar Mateen opened fire in the Orlando Gay Club. As the names were being read, a photographer snapped a picture of a flock of exactly 49 birds flying overhead. The birds had not been released and were an apparent freak accident occurrence at the vigil, which left the crowd stunned. There are many such grief coincidences happening out there. We don't know how they work, but there appears to be some connection between death and nature. The Tibetan Book of the Dead prepares the soul for what happens after the body dies. It's an age-old question about what happens when we die, an age-old question which religions have provided answers for but little proof. Our government spends millions on health care and scientific research, but almost nothing on the death transition we will all go through. What do you believe? The Tibetan Book of the Dead suggests that the soul goes through several layers or bardos on the way out. With enough preparation and management of anxiety, there may be a portal out into the next level of being. If not, there is the return to this life in some form. Here's another idea about what happens, a poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on the snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there. I did not die. Among the most incredible coincidences we have are the correlations between reports of young children about people who have died and the details of deceased persons. Jim B. Tucker, our guest today, is Bonner-Lowry Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Neurobiology here at the University of Virginia. Dr. Tucker obtained his undergraduate degree and medical degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He then completed training in psychiatry and child psychiatry at the University of Virginia. After a stint in private practice, he returned to UVA. He has served as medical director of the UVA Child and Family Psychiatry Clinic and is currently director of the Division of Perceptual Studies, where he is continuing the work of Ian Stevenson. He is the author of 2 books on the topic, and I'll get to that, the topic of life after life. And I'll get to more details as I introduce Jim in our next segment. I'll be back after a short break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to CC with BB, connecting with coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. That's me. Our guest today is a colleague and friend of mine, Jim B. Tucker, who is director of the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, where he is continuing the work of Ian Stevenson on children who report memories of previous lives. These are amazing coincidences that Dr. Tucker is putting together for us. And he has written about them in 2 books on the topic that together have been translated into 20 languages. Life Before Life, a scientific investigation of children's memories of previous lives, and Return to Life, extraordinary cases of children who remember past lives. Welcome to the show, Jim. Glad to have you on it.
Thank you very much, Bernie. It's great to be here.
Please tell us how you got in, how Ian Stevenson got into studying children's and their memories of past lives, and then where you picked up on it.
Well, Ian was quite a successful mainstream psychiatrist, and he came to University of Virginia, to UVA, to be chairman of the department when he was still in his 30s, and at that point had nearly 70 publications to his credit. But when he interviewed, he told folks he had an interest in parapsychology, but he had a lot of other interests too, and nobody really seemed to pay a whole lot of attention. But then after that, there was a journal that offered a contest for the best paper on the question of life after death, and Ian, over the years, had collected reports from various publications, journals, books, magazines, wherever he could find them, of people reporting the memory of a past life. And what he did in that paper was put together 44 of them and then analyze them as a group. After that paper was published, he started hearing about new cases and eventually got some funding to go investigate them, got more and more intrigued, eventually stepped down as chairman, and then spent the bulk of the next 40 years focused not exclusively on these cases, but spending much of his time studying these cases. So we now have 2,500 that have been studied. I got involved in the late 90s.
Jim, before you go on with that, I think this Ian Stevenson story is fascinating to me. And I think for our listeners, here's a guy that was very successful academically and had a great and bright academic future ahead of him, but somehow was interested in parapsychology as he became chairman. Do you have any idea of where his interest in parapsychology came from?
Well, he had always been quite open-minded. His mother apparently was into theosophy, so she had quite a number of books on theosophy, and of course he was a voracious reader, so I'm sure he read some of those along with a lot of other things. But he always went where sort of the evidence took him, basically, and I mean, even back in the late 50s, he was publishing papers in mainstream places saying that this evidence on parapsychology is getting hard to ignore. So then this interest, sort of led naturally into this burgeoning field, finding more and more of these cases, and he was intrigued by the question of life after death, and he viewed these cases of children with past life memories, as potentially a new way to study the question of life after death, because he said compared to mediumship, studying mediums, where you're trying to determine that somebody who's unquestionably dead, trying to determine if they still live. In this case, it was the reverse, whether a child who's clearly still alive, who clearly is alive, whether he had died before. So it was a new avenue to the question, and over the years, many people have found that it's quite an intriguing avenue.
Well, very well said. And the reason to do young children, please elaborate on that, because what happens as people get older?
Yeah, so there are a couple of reasons that the benefits of studying young children. The main one is just that they are the ones who usually have memories of past lives. And they start at a very early age. The average age when they start talking about a past life is 35 months. So it's usually 2 or 3-year-olds when they start. And then by the time they're 6 or 7, most of them stop talking about it. So there's this fairly narrow window to catch them. Now, we do occasionally hear from adults who report that they have developed memories of past lives. The advantage of the kids is that we know a 2-year-old has not been exposed to a lot of information about history or about people in other locations, whereas with an adult, especially adults who, for instance, recall ancient lives that are completely unverifiable.
Yeah.
Well, they may have details about ancient Rome or whatever, but, over time, a lot of us have been exposed to a lot of material, and we may forget where it even came from. And so they may think they are memories of a past life, and actually it's information that they learned over the years.
I may be in the halfway realm there, because when I was a teenager, I began to have what seemed like memories of being on a barbed wire fence with spotlights shining on me, and having machine guns kill me, put bullets in me while I'm hanging on to that fence. And as the years went by, I may have built up the picture, and this is where I can't tell, that it was a Nazi concentration camp that I was in, and I was trying to get out of there, or trying to die, really, because I didn't want to be there anymore. And it's easy to show how that can be confounded, even if I was a teenager. I was born during World War II. I'm Jewish, and these are memories that could have been around in my family, even though nobody talked about it. But the great thing about the children is, as you say, they don't have any history. They don't have anybody telling them things. It comes de novo, apparently, from them, and I think that's what you're discovering.
That's right. I mean, you raise an interesting question, like with your memories, where you may not even specifically recall people talking about such things, but it might have been in the air around you, where you would get glimpses of conversations.
Yes.
So with our cases, even with young children, we try to assess, could they have access to this information through some sort of accidental, natural process?
Yes.
And if a child is talking about someone who died in the same village or the same town, well, then or same family even, you have to be concerned about that. When you're talking about, as in some of our cases, a child remembering a life from dozens of years ago in another place, well, then that becomes a much more unlikely explanation.
Yeah, we're looking at probabilities of data, and that's what I do have to do with coincidences. This to me is a form of coincidence studies, where you get the child talking about something, and then you find correlations someplace else. And studying coincidence is very similar. You get two different things, and you see how similar they are, and then look at the probability of that association. Well,
that's right, and some people have said that our cases are, quote, just coincidences, they may put it in fancier terms of prior probabilities or whatever, but basically they mean, yes, just by chance that the child happens to give details that match somebody who died. But in our best cases, I don't think that's a plausible explanation.
Well, I didn't know that. I suspected that it would be called random, just, or probability, or something that I get all the time. And there is, with coincidence studies, the need to develop a probability estimate for a coincidence. It's part of the definition of a coincidence is the probability degree. And in a way, I don't know how directly you do that, but in a way, you want to have very, very low probability coincidences, and that low probability is a higher indication that there's something to it.
Yeah, not everything of value can be measured precisely. So I think if a child is talking about a past life, I don't think there's any way to come up with a precise calculation of how likely it is that the statements match somebody just randomly by chance.
No. There is no precision in this, and I can't do precision with coincidences either. But I can make kind of intuitive, probabilistic estimates, and the more details you get matched, the lower the probability.
Yes, exactly. And, some of them pass the smell test. That you look at them and say, that is not coincidence, or that may not be the right term to use in this situation. But you look, that's not just by chance.
Yeah, and it's not just coincidence on this, because we're talking about coincidence on this program. So the people who call it coincidences, how do they just or mere coincidences, how do they justify that?
Well, not very well. But, if you can't come up with any other explanation, you can always say, it just happened by accident.
That's good. So let's tell us how you got involved with picking up on this tremendous work of Ian Stevenson.
Well, I was kind of just having happy mainstream career also. I was in private practice as a child psychiatrist and living in Charlottesville where the university is, and not feeling completely fulfilled in my work when I became intrigued by this work going on here. And I just happened to be reading one of Ian Stevenson's books when my wife and I saw in the local newspaper that his research division had gotten a grant to do a new study on near-death experiences.
Hey, wait a minute. I was asking you about coincidences and you and this work, and there's a nice little one. The ad.
Yes, as a matter of fact.
Coincidences spoken here. That's not a bad one. I just happen to be reading. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me there was a certain synchronicity there. So, I just called up the office at my wife's nudging to see if they needed help with this new study. And the interesting thing is, one of the interesting things is that I actually never ended up helping on that particular study. But that was my foot in the door, and kind of one thing led to another.
Yeah, and one thing did lead to another. And in between, you've done a lot of work with some help with medical students and other people in trying to put your data together. We have another minute in this segment before we break, and I'm just trying to think about what it was like for you when you first started working there. What was the experience for you, and then we'll continue that in the next segment.
Well, it was one of getting involved with some hesitancy, to be honest. I mean, it was sort of putting my toe in the water and gradually getting comfortable with approaching things that I wasn't used to approaching, and occasionally stepping back and thinking, wow, this is some pretty wild stuff I'm looking at here.
We're coming to the end. I find it a nice coincidence in the fact that this volunteer named Jim Tucker, who studies kids, is a child psychiatrist. We'll come back after a brief break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to CC with BB, Connecting with Coincidence with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. We have a guest. Our guest today is Dr. Jim Tucker, MD, the head of the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia and a foremost researcher in reincarnation. Jim, we're talking about your beginning involvement with the Division of Perceptual Studies and Ian Stevenson. And I just thought it was a lovely connection that you're a child psychiatrist and that's who you're talking with is kids. So that seems to be another positive in your involvement with this work.
Well, absolutely. It certainly works out that I'm quite comfortable with families and with kids. And when I did get involved with this, Ian, I think, was hopeful that there could be somebody who could carry on this work at UVA. And he was nearly 80 when I called the office on the phone.
Oh, really? I didn't
know.
Oh,
wow. The fact that it turned out this was a child psychiatrist who was interested in doing a different kind of work really, I'm sure, appealed to him. I mean,
Yes.
When I got involved, I wasn't specifically even thinking about these past life cases, but this more just this work in general. I've taken careful approach with it, sort of a scientific attitude toward the question of life after death. But then, of course, this is where the need was, and now it's become essentially my life's work.
Yes, and when I think about coincidences, and I think of Ian Stevenson nearing the end of his life, deeply dedicated to this work and having a tremendous need for someone to pick it up, look who he gets. A mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper, who an unassuming kind of guy who's just kind of careful and wants to do it correctly with a scientific attitude, who's a child psychiatrist, and the main thing is talking to little kids. And I that's the sort of thing I look for, where a need is met in a surprising way that really works for the person involved. So you were a godsend for Ian Stevenson, and it fits into the sort of coincidence things that I study. So I look for that.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of one time I went to a John Kabat-Zinn workshop, with mindfulness-based stress reduction, and he said at their operation, whenever they needed somebody, that person knocked on the door.
Yeah.
And after a while you think, all right, well, there seems to be some sort of process here beyond just blind luck that brings in people when you need them.
Beautiful, and that's what I'm trying to study, Jim, and that's my version of wondering about all this. So you got into it, and you have your careful way of approaching things, your scientific way of thinking, your systematic way of thinking, and then it started to just blossom for you into several books, translated 2 books that have been translated into 20 languages, many appearances around the world talking about it. A couple of great TV shows, that one that did a very nice review, I think a morning show, the Today Show, I think, that did a great review of what you were doing. It was really well done, I thought, and respectful. Tell us what it looks like to you since you began with Ian, the way the world looks at reincarnation.
Well, that's an interesting question, the way the world looks at reincarnation. If you look at polling, you find that about 25% of Americans believe in reincarnation. Even 20% of American Christians do. But many of them, it's kind of a personal hidden belief. And those numbers have not changed, not dramatically or significantly changed over the years. So there's certainly an interest in the topic in at least a significant minority of people. But it's still a topic that I think feels foreign to a lot of people. Most of us who grow up in Judeo-Christian kind of households, reincarnation is not something, of course, that becomes familiar to us. And I think as far as sort of getting the word out to the world, there's a certain resistance. And you're right, the Today Show and then the variant on the NBC Nightly News, they did a very nice job of presenting one of our cases and talking some about our work. And there are journalists and people making documentaries and everything else that are intrigued by this work. But I also think that there still remains significant resistance to it.
Is it more acceptable in England and Australia to think about reincarnation?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Because I ask because coincidences are more a topic of interest in those 2 places, from what I have been able to see. And there are other places around the world that are there other places around the world that are more accepting, interested in what your work is?
Well, it's certainly places with a more general belief in reincarnation. Obviously, people are more open to it.
Yes.
So there are plenty of places like that. But, it's surprising. Like with my first book, there were a bunch of editions for Eastern Europe, which I would not have expected. I mean, Czech Republic and Poland and Romania and various places.
Wow.
Apparently there is interest in these sorts of things there. So it varies, and of course you never know who's going to be open to it. So you can have, we'll get emails from established, successful physicians or scientists or whatever. Now, they may not be telling their colleagues of their interest, but there are plenty of people around who do find it intriguing at the very least.
Very good, very good. Let's bring our audience through one of your cases and the experience you have in going to visit a family and putting together the facts with the facts from the child and the facts of the past life.
Okay. Yeah, so the one actually that was on the Today Show is a little boy named Ryan. So we got a letter one day from a mom from Oklahoma. And this was not an email, an actual letter in the U.S. mail, saying that she and her husband were just ordinary folks. She worked in the county clerk's office. Her husband was a police officer. But their little 5-year-old for the last year had talked about a past life in Hollywood and would beg and cry practically daily to be taken back home to Hollywood. So his mom got some books out of the public library about Hollywood to see if looking at things could help him process this more. So now here comes a coincidence. They were looking through one day, and they stop at a picture from an old movie called Night After Night. And Ryan points at one of the guys and says, "Hey, Mama, that's George. We did a picture together." And then points at another one and says, "And Mama, that's me. I found me." Well, the first one that he pointed to was George Raft, who, for those of us of a certain age, know that he became a star mostly in like gangster movies.
Yeah.
This is actually a very early film of his.
He was a great gangster. Yes.
Yeah. But the other guy he pointed to that he said he had been was an extra with no lines in the movie. Ryan's mom, yeah.
Do you have any idea about why the parents were looking at that book at that time and that Ryan was hanging around with them, looking at it with them?
Well, the mom had, I guess once he started talking about this, she had looked up some about past life memories, and she had read that if kids visit the previous place or meet the previous people or whatever, that it helps them deal with it and process it and let it go, which is certainly true in our cases. If the child visits the previous place, usually the intensity of the emotional aspect of things will simmer down. So that's why she had gotten those books specifically for them to look at. Now, she wasn't expecting that he was going to point to a guy in a picture and say that's who he had been in his past life. So even that was a coincidence beyond the
Yeah, and what I look for there is intuition guiding a mother trying to help a child, and intuition leading her to a book, to a page with the child there without really knowing consciously or cognitively what she was doing.
Well, that's right. So, I mean, there are a couple of different ways to look at that event. I mean, one is that had she not done that, it would just be one more unverified case. So this just happened to be the one where the kid did see a picture and say, "Yeah, that's who I was."
Wow. Wow.
But beyond that, there's the possibility that, like you say, that coincidence meaning not blind luck, but that there was a process involved that led her to that book and that picture in some way that's difficult to explain.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And without George Raft, he would be just another kid talking. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Well, without that picture, sure. I mean, George Raft wasn't so important as the other guy that he's.
Metaphorically, without that, I just had to bring up.
Well, that's right. Without that picture, there would have been no way to identify who he was talking about. I mean, we see this a lot with the American cases. The kids may give a lot of details, But if they don't give specific names or places, or in this case, point to a picture, there's just no way to verify whether the child is remembering an actual past life or whether there might just be a fantasy involved.
Oh yeah. So this picture I'm just repeating was a fulcrum around which a possibility became a reality, that this was a real case.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's you see why I'm interested in coincidences. It's kind of just so. But please continue about what happened after the photograph.
Well, at that point, I went and visited the family and had a nice talk with all of them and with Ryan. And then afterwards, as we're trying to figure out who this person was, Mom is emailing me sometimes on a daily basis with all the statements that Ryan's making.
Wow.
So the fact that it took us a long time to identify the person, which we eventually did, was good in the sense that it allowed us to document what Ryan was saying about his past life.
Mm-hmm.
And we can be sure that, we had the documentation before we were eventually able to figure out who this guy was.
That's good. We have another. We're coming to the end of this segment, and I'm going to want to be able to know where you think your work is going, perhaps with another case, but with 2,500 cases, we might go through some of the details of the way you're analyzing them. I think that might be a bit useful. But as I mentioned at the beginning, everybody dies, and there's no research there's not much funding for research like yours, and there needs to be. And how we get enough pressure out there with kind of data that you're putting together to shape up some people to get some cash would be a good thing to do. So we'll be back to discuss this in our next segment after a brief break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to CC with BB. Synchronicity spoken here, and our guest today is Dr. Jim B. Tucker, head of the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and author of 2 books on reincarnation translated into 20 languages. We're talking about one of his cases, a boy named Ryan. And Jim, please continue with the story of Ryan and the photograph and what happened afterwards.
Yeah, so as we were searching, trying to figure out who this guy was, eventually we were able to do it with the help of a Hollywood archivist. She went to the library of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, got all the materials on Night After Night, most of which was on the stars, but as she eventually found a picture that included a caption, it was a picture of this guy Ryan had pointed to, this fellow named Marty Martin. And I was then able to meet with Marty Martin's daughter and then review records we were able to find on him. And eventually we were able to verify that over 50 of Ryan's statements matched Marty Martin's life.
Wow. Wow.
Including some pretty specific things, like, for instance, Ryan said he had a big house with a swimming pool, which, of course, is not so specific, but he said that the street address had the word rock or mount in it, and Marty Martin lived on North Roxbury. And Ryan also said one time that he didn't see why God would let you get to 61 and then make you come back again as a baby. And which is sort of interesting from a philosophical standpoint, I guess. But Marty Martin's death certificate said he was only 59. So it looked like Ryan was off on that, but then his daughter and his stepson both said no, he was actually 61, which is what's on his gravestone. So I looked into it, and I found a passenger list, 3 census records, and 2 marriage listings that all gave ages that meant Marty Martin was, in fact, 61 when he died and not 59. So even though the death certificate said 59, Ryan was correct when he said 61.
I love these details, and it's important for our audience to hear just the painstaking work that you and your people have done in trying to figure out, to verify these connections. So that's. Are there some other ones that stand out with Ryan? The connections like this, words that he says.
Well, yes, in sort of more general sense. So, for instance, he talked about dancing on stage in New York. Marty Martin danced on Broadway. He said he then went to Hollywood and worked in movies, which Marty Martin did, mostly working on dancing in movies. Ryan said how he then worked for an agency, and Marty Martin started a successful talent agency. Ryan said how he saw the world from big boats, talked about visiting Paris. Marty Martin and his wife went to Europe on the Queen Mary, and then we've got photos of them in Paris. Again, a lot of details that end up adding up to more than
beautiful
50 statements.
Yeah. That's amazing. And what impact? I'm trying to imagine being Ryan and being Marty Martin's daughter. What impact it has on these two people to have such strong evidence of a past life.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think for Ryan, like with a lot of these kids, once we were able to verify all of this and he was able to see the old places and actually meet the daughter, this all simmered down after that, which again, is what we usually see. I think partly because it's satisfying to see that their memories are confirmed, that they're not just making it up. But also they see that sort of the past is in the past, that people have moved on, that life is no longer there. And then they get more wrapped up in this one. So Ryan now is 12, and he has he's let all this go, and he's doing quite well. He's an honor student and enjoying life, and things look good for him.
He still will have the memory of having a memory of past lives verified. And so maybe when he's older, he can wonder about questions like, why would God made you come back when you're age 61? About what about the in-between time? He's got to wonder sometime in his life just what happened between the death of Marty Martin and the birth of Ryan.
Well, he talked a little bit about that. So to get to the first part of that, one of our colleagues, Erlander Harrelson, a few years ago, went and interviewed adults who had originally been studied when they were children.
Good.
And some of them did talk about how, having had those memories, influenced their outlook on life. That they had essentially a more spiritual kind of outlook. So even though, like for instance, for Ryan, I mean, it was tough going through it when he was young because he was so distraught about not having that life anymore. But I suspect in the long run he would say that it was helpful to him.
He was distraught about no longer being Marty Martin?
Well, yeah, I mean, missing people and missing that life and wanting to go back home to it.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, we hear this all the time. For some of the kids, they don't really understand that it is even in the past. So they may say to their parents, "You're not really my parents. My parents live in such and such place." And then again, once they go to that place and they see that life has moved on, that time has moved on, then they're able to process it better.
I remember a story a colleague from India told me of a child being born and said, "You are not my parents. This is not my village," and she was able to tell them in the next village where her parents were, because she had died fairly young, but still conscious. And they said, "If you're really who you say you are, then you know where the money is buried." And she took them to a place where the money was buried, and that verified it for them.
Yeah. We don't have a ton of cases with that clear, finding buried treasure kind of things. But yes, I mean, we've got tons of cases where the children are able to give specifics that match with the previous person.
It just seems to me that being verified to having been alive somehow in a previous period of time has to influence the way you think about the world. But you've told me they're more spiritual, and Harold went through and talked about them. But I'll just have to leave that question alone because right now, because I'm just identifying with Ryan and people like him, and trying to integrate that into my own experience. But that's another question. In the remaining couple of minutes, why don't you tell us where you think the future of your work and studies of reincarnation are going? Because I'd love to see it get strong enough for the National Institute of Health to fund what you're doing and what others could help you do.
Well, I think one area we'll continue to go, I hope, is studying strong American cases. Ian Stevenson focused on ones in Asia or other places where there's a strong general belief in reincarnation because that's where he was finding the cases. But now, largely through the help of the Internet, cases find us. So we're hearing from more and more American parents, and we've got some strong American cases. If we had 50 as strong as Ryan's, well, then that gets pretty hard to ignore.
Yes.
So I do think it's important to, even though we've been collecting cases for 50 years, I think it's important to continue to look specifically for strong American cases. I think beyond that, you alluded to, we've got this database. So for each case, we coded on 200 variables, put it in a database, and we can then analyze features and patterns in the big picture that you can't see at the level of an individual case. And we've published some on that, but we will continue to do that. It's taking us many, many years to get all the old cases coded, but we've got over 2,000 of them coded now. And I think that will continue to bear fruit and to show us some interesting facts about this phenomenon.
As we come to the end of this segment, what are some of the patterns that are emerging from the meta-analysis of all these cases?
Well, I mean, there are several, and I know we're getting close to the end, but one thing we definitely see is that dying violently or dying young seems to make it more likely that a child will later talk about that life.
Yes.
And those are independent variables that, people who die violently tend to be younger than people who die naturally, but even if you just look at the natural death cases, those who die young are more likely to have your life recalled later than people who die older. So that implies that there is, I mean, people use the term unfinished business. I'm not crazy about that, but it implies that there is this incomplete life that then seems to continue on in a new life, perhaps trying to achieve some of the goals that were not completed with the life that ended prematurely.
Very good. And that brings us back to that wonderful question of Ryan, why would God send me back when I died at age 61? Haven't I done enough on this earth? Why do I have to what else do I have to do? How would you answer that for Ryan?
Well, I would say, he may have moved to the next grade, but it doesn't mean that he's completed school. I mean, we all have things to learn, and you hope that each life builds on the previous one, and that we do make some progress in our development.
Beautiful ending. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Welcome. Bye-bye.